I have a wonderful guest with me today, Kelly McDermott, who's based in Vermont and has been bringing heart-centered healing to people and animals in Vermont since 2006. Kelly trained in the Let Animals Lead method of Animal Reiki with Kathleen Prasad, with Frans Stiene of the International House of Reiki, and Hyakuten Inamoto of Komyo Reiki Do. She's a certified meditation and mindfulness teacher and end-of-life care for Companion Animals Doula. She's also the East Coast Director and Ethics Officer for the Shelter Animal Reiki Association and is on the board of Tree of Life for Animals in the US. When it comes to humans, Kelly was instrumental in creating the Reiki program at the Rutland Regional Medical Center and helped develop the Hospice Reiki program in Rutland as a trainer and volunteer, among other achievements. Kelly, thank you so much for saying yes to the interview.
Oh, thank you for asking me, Natalie. I really appreciate it.
It's so much fun. For those of you listening or viewing, I've known of Kelly for years. We have been in many Zooms together. It's the first time I get to chat with her, so I'm really excited. And I'm going to start this interview the same way I start with everyone. And when is the first time you came into contact with Reiki?
Well, this is an interesting story because I've always been kind of, for years I was a seeker. Like in my 30s, I really wanted to find, kind of find a spiritual path, actually. And I got into Wicca, and I was living in Maryland at the time. And we had a circle one evening, and one of the women did Reiki, the woman that led the circle. And I didn't really know her, but I was like 2 weeks away from moving to Vermont. And so we were in the circle, and she came around to everybody and said, do you want to feel the hands of a healer? And I thought, she had told us a little bit about Reiki, and I thought she was just going to do something. And then she took my hands and went like this and folded them over my heart. And I was like, that's really interesting. And then in the craziness of moving and, going to another state and everything, it really didn't come up again. And, I've always, you don't know this, I spent some time in Japan when I was in high school. My dad was working there. Yeah. So I was always fascinated with Japanese stuff, so my dad and I were very close. And while I was here and he was in Maryland, he had some surgery and it didn't go well. So he went into a coma, and I went down to Maryland to be with him. And after he passed, I came back, and right after that, there was a sign for somebody teaching Reiki. And it just felt like my dad lined that all up for me, and so I signed up for the class. It was level 1 in the the Reiki Alliance lineage, and took my first level 1 class. Turned out it was a private class. I was the only student, and I did it because I wanted to help. Like after my dad's passing, I was like, I don't ever want to feel like that again. I don't want to feel like I'm helpless. So that was one of the reasons I took it. But then I started seeing like, oh my God, I just love this. And, it feels so good. And the self-treatment is wonderful, and all the energy moving. And I never experienced something like that before. And so I just fell in love with it immediately and did my second class with the same woman, and then just kept going. So it hooked me.
Well, that's a beautiful story. And being in high school in Japan, I'm like so jealous. It must have been beautiful.
I'd like to go back as an adult, frankly, and it's on my radar. As a teenager, it was my last year of high school, so it was a hard time, but it was also really stimulating and fascinating. And we lived in a Japanese neighborhood. We didn't live with the Americans, and so it was kind of challenging to get around, but also really exciting. It was quite a time.
Did you get to speak it? I'm trying to learn for the last 3 months, and I can only order coffee and tell you this is my favorite restaurant. That's as much as I can do.
Scotchy. I could speak a little Japanese. A lot of it went away, after I left. I just didn't have the opportunity to practice it. But I am now doing Duolingo, and I'm over 100 days. So I'm just like really excited. Like, let's bring it back. Some of it is coming back, but a lot of it isn't. So
I survived 6 weeks with 6 sentences, and I got around the whole country, like in weird towns. So yeah, it's
Well, we're the only ones who don't speak more than one language. So, but it's really, it was really exciting because, we had a woman who took care of my brother and I and did the cooking and stuff like that. And she didn't speak any English at all. She was in her 80s, probably. She was really adorable lady. And so she, we would somehow communicate with her and everything worked out in the end. And, most people over there we found did speak some English at that time. I mean, I'm talking 70s, late 70s. And so, we made friends with some really nice people nearby. And there was a guy who owned a yakitori shop who just really had a relationship with my little brother. He was like fascinated. My brother would stop and get his yakitori. And so then they invited the whole family to come for dinner and everything. People were just so gracious and lovely.
Beautiful, especially with youngsters, because they don't have a lot of young people like in the towns outside the cities. Yes. So they are lovely. So coming back a little bit to Reiki, right? You did your Reiki 1, Reiki 2, you fell in love with it, but most training, especially at that time when you started, was like really human-based. How did you realize, actually, I love sharing Reiki with animals? Like how did that happen?
Yeah, I have cats here of my own, and I've always been an animal lover. And I just kind of thought, well, how is there anything, I wanted to know if there's anything on animal Reiki specifically, and found Kathleen Prasad's first animal Reiki book was on Amazon. It hadn't been released yet. And, I just happened to find it. And so then I, signed up to have it sent to me as soon as it was released. And I was so excited. And then I read that and wound up, and of course, back then we weren't practicing the let animals lead method. So it was a little bit more, we were doing the meditation, but it was more of a human Reiki application, but being very mindful of how the animals responded. And then I did a correspondence course with her. And then after that, I was like, oh, I got to go out there to Brighthaven in California and do my teacher training.
Oh, that's commitment. Yeah.
Yeah, I was committed. I was really committed. It was really an unusual sort of series of events because, it was kind of a leap of faith, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, and those are the ones that pay off a lot in my experience, right?
Yeah, and they're Reiki charged a lot of times. Sort of like you start doing Reiki and then these doors open and it's amazing.
That's beautiful. So since when have you been practicing animal Reiki? And perhaps if you can tell us a little bit of your experience and how your practice has evolved over time. Because as you said at the beginning, it was like mostly modifying hand position to animals, and it has changed a lot. So if you can talk a little bit about that evolution, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so that's a good, where do I start with that? So as we all began training and practicing with the animals, Kathleen and I stayed connected, and then the Shelter Animal Reiki Association was born. And so I think I studied with her in 2008. And they were just, she was just talking about that in our class. And so I was really interested in helping shelter animals. And so I've continued to study with Kathleen, just as I have continued to study with Frans, because once you find a good teacher, you want to stick with them. And so as Kathleen is kind of evolved in how she sees the animals respond, that's how it kind of came into the Let Animals Lead method. So we'd been actually practicing the Let Animals Lead method of hands-off Reiki with them for a while before it actually, got a trademark name. So, so really just sitting in the meditation space with the animals. And I think a lot of this came out of our training, with the International House of Reiki, because we both trained there. I think that, so then we were more thinking of the self-development, like really working on ourselves. And then through that, being able to hold that space more gracefully with the animals, and not, forcing anything with them, not trying to fix anything, always allowing them agency. So I don't know that we had, it's been so long, I don't know that that was the language back then, but as we all practice more and more with the animals, it was really clear, especially going into shelters, how we needed to be hands off anyways, and just sitting in that beautiful Reiki space with them was how we could do that.
No, and it's funny because many lineages have like hands-on Reiki on, hands-off Reiki off. But I think sharing Reiki with shelter animals, or even like wild animals, like that you cannot really approach and touch, is a good example that if we are in the space of light, and again, we're in a Reiki space, like, we can still share this beautiful healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when we're just sitting in that meditative state and we're just we're working on ourselves, first of all, that's the most important thing, is that we're working on ourselves to let go of the anger and the worry, not bringing that into the Reiki session with the animal, not seeing the animal, for instance, in a shelter as damaged, or, bringing pity into that situation. And so through that, the animals are more comfortable to be with us, and they may come up, but we're always mirroring what they show us. So we're not putting our hands on them unless they come over and look like they're okay to be touched. And if we do reach out and they back off, then we back off. So we're always following them, following their lead, and allowing them to decide how they want the session. And I think for Kathleen, she discovered, you interviewed her. It's been a while since I saw that, but her thing was like she would meditate and her dog would sit with her, but the dog didn't like hands-on. And I had a cat like that. My cat didn't like it, but when I'd finish meditating, she'd be behind me. I'd be on my bench and I'd look around, she'd be behind me. So and then we have other animals who are just like, I want to be in your lap, I want to be touched. And so always following how they want to have the session.
And I love that, because we usually as humans, we own the animal in quote marks, versus being, and the same way that the mind also rules over the body, there is not a lot of equality in our relationship sometimes. So for me, giving the animal to decide, giving it the respect is so beautiful, right? I co-parent a little cat. She's like a tiny savage. She's 8 months or 9 months old, but she's a savage little feral hunter. And it's funny because like there is no way you can touch her. But the other day I was meditating deep in this, and I went really deep, and she was crawling over me and she put her nose next to my nose. And then when I opened my eyes, she was looking around me, and it was such a beautiful thing, right? Like, and since then she has been a lot calmer. Like there was a big shift in her, but it was her coming, like, that's it. She was ready for it. And I think that I learned from you and from Kathleen, because at the beginning I was the one running after the cats, like I spent, as I mentioned in the interview with her, I spent quite a few hours running after cats. And they don't like it. And for me, it's also an insight for humans. Like, can we apply a little bit of this approach of seeing this person as perfect, as this person is actually leading the session in our human Reiki practice as well?
Yeah. And, how we wouldn't want somebody we don't know, or even somebody we know, just run up, put their hands on us and, I'm going to give you Reiki. And I've seen that also where, practitioners will go over to an animal that's injured or something and just hands on. And, it's just so unfair to the animal. But also, when we're in that peaceful space, the animals are drawn to that. We're in that meditative space. It was funny because I just came from the shelter this morning, and one of the staff members, I asked if I could go in with one of the dogs who's in a front room, and he said, yeah, just you'll probably just sit there and he'll be across from you, and that'll be that. He's not really, coming up to people. So I sat down, and like 2 minutes later, the dog came over and laid down next to me. That was it. And so, we don't, when we're doing a session with them, we're coming to them without any kind of agenda. We don't need anything from them. We don't need to do anything to them. And we're just holding that space again, just being with them in this heart space, this beautiful light that we know about from Reiki, and letting them, decide, do they want to be in that light or do they not want to be in that light? And how long do they want to be in the light or not want to be in the light? Or do they want to be in and out of the light? I mean, it's all totally up to them. And it's so powerful because now they have the choice to be involved in their own healing if that's what they wish.
It's funny. So you sent me a Reiki 1 person to train in human Reiki. And what I found, it was so much easier to train because she had the right principles to approach a person, that I was making a joke, like everybody should get Reiki 1 with animals first and then go to humans, right? Yeah. Because I think one of the challenges we have is the expectation, and humans will tell you, I felt, I didn't feel. Animals teach us in a way of letting go. So now I have this thing like, oh, maybe everybody should study animal Reiki and then human Reiki, because it's more difficult, right? It has more communication, more, I don't know, we want the person to feel and change. And with the animals, we have to let go. We can't control them.
Exactly. And it's challenging. I still have those days where it's like, what's happening? Is something happening? Because sometimes I don't feel anything at all, even with people. But you do get that feedback. And so, we do, when we do our training, we do have our students do chair Reiki, because oftentimes when they go to work with an animal in a household, they'll work with the person first and just give them a little chair Reiki, so they have an idea of what it feels like for their animal, and also because a lot of times the people really need it, and often you can see how the animal's responding. They might come over and sit with the person while they're getting chair Reiki, but it also gives the students an opportunity to get that feedback, so that they have verbal acknowledgement that something's happening. And that, takes a lot of pressure off of them as they try to build their confidence. It's really important for that.
It's beautiful. So when I started practicing Reiki, and you have no idea how many free sessions I did to get hours. So, and I will do them on the bed, because obviously I didn't have a massage table or anything. And I will put my hands always like both hands like parallel. And my dog will put his 2 paws on the person's body and look at me like, this is what we're doing. And it was so beautiful, right? Because sometimes they literally want to participate. Like, oh, this is about putting the 2 paws. Look how well I'm doing. It was the cutest thing, right?
It's adorable. I mean, I have my cat, Bo. He's a big orange boy. And every morning I get my coffee and I get my phone, and we come down here where I do all my Reiki work. And I'm just like, okay, Bo, meditation time. And he just runs down the stairs after me, gets in my lap. I do my meditation, and he does it every morning. He loves it. And sometimes he kind of guilts me if I don't come right down. He'll circle around me a little bit, but he loves it. He loves being in my lap. And then I have another cat who will come sometimes. She has some health issues, and sometimes I can tell she's not feeling so great. And those are the days she might come for a couple of days in a row, and then she doesn't come again for another month. So beautiful. It's really wonderful to, they have their own way of being with that energy and knowing what they need. I think Bo's like me, where I'm like, I would never say, well, it depends on who's doing it, but I would never say no to Reiki. Like, if I could have it every minute, I would have it every minute, I think. But Elsie's kind of like, well, today I don't really need it, so I'm not coming down. And, that's cool.
It's also, she's in the space, she's already in that beautiful space of light and calmness and beauty. So I was reading a little bit. So what is your doula work? If you can talk a little bit about that part of your work as well.
Yeah. So during COVID, I took a course with UVM, University of Vermont, on they have 2 programs. One's a human doula program for end-of-life care, and the other's for animals or animal companions. And so I have done a lot of work with hospice over the years anyway, and have worked quite a bit with animals who are passing. So I just thought it would be a good idea to take a course like that and find out, get more information, get some training. And so it's really fascinating. It's just very much about, assisting somebody to, just like a human doula would do, like helping them through the transition of an animal, through the impending grief, through, trying to make arrangements, knowing who to call for. So I have like a resource list for my local area, like what pets would come to your house and where would you go for cremation and all that kind of stuff. So the things that, sort of as a guide for people as they're getting ready to say goodbye to their animals.
Well, that's beautiful because you're supporting both the animal and the human going through that process, and in a practical and spiritual way. That is amazing, because I had literally never heard about death doulas for pets or animals. And I was like, oh my God, like when our ex-dog passed, like, it was so painful and we were not really equipped. We didn't even know when it was time to call the vet and we waited too long. But it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. But like, I'm like, wow, that is the first time I hear about it. So I think it's great. So basically you can train of it in universities and all of that if people are interested.
Yeah, the University of Vermont has a program for both humans and companion animals online. I think they're doing a hybrid thing now. One of my students is doing it. And so I think you also can go up there. But I know also Brighthaven, Gail Pope at Brighthaven in California, where I did my training. They also have online animal hospice courses.
Perfect. And imagine someone does a training and they're interested in perhaps being a doula for animals and the human companions. It's true but if there is a couple of tips you could share from experience, like for them to really watch out and be there for people, what will those 2 things or 3 things, whatever comes to your mind?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is be a good listener. And it's really important to not make it about you. But the same thing as holding space with Reiki is holding space while people share what they're dealing with. And so bringing what is called unconditional positive regard, and just letting the people, share whatever they need to share, and being a good sounding board for them, but not, trying to fix anything.
I think you said 2 things that for me, beyond animal or human, don't make it about you and don't try to fix, right? And I never heard anyone in my interview say don't make it about you, but that's true, because when we're looking for expectations, results, it's all we're making the session about us. So I think that's going to be my next big post-it everywhere. Don't make it about you.
That's right. Yeah, it's the same with Reiki, where we're in the doula sense, we're witnesses, right? So we're holding the space as a witness and guiding them with anything they have questions about. That's practical kind of things, but also just being able to listen and get out of the way, because a lot of times we do want to, it's human nature to hear the experience and want to share your own experience to make that connection. But that's not helpful to somebody who's going through grief, whether it's over an animal or a human. So yeah, just keeping that space all about the person who's grieving.
Yeah, that is lovely. And it's funny, sometimes we make it about ourselves without even noticing. So I think it's beautiful. And again, how can we soften that big I also with the Reiki precepts? But this is a good embodiment of don't make it about the I, right?
Right, exactly.
Because anger, worry, everything is about that you or that I, whatever, depending on who we're talking. So I think literally I have my post-it now.
Because that's the same thing, with working with animals is, if we're coming in and we're bringing all our baggage about, animals we've had in the past, or, because I go into the shelter a lot, seeing animals who have been abandoned or, mistreated, I can't bring that in there, because they're going to feel that. They're going to feel that energy. And so I'm just pouring gas on the fire of an animal who's already having a difficult time. And so if I come in, and as we always talk about, seeing them with our Reiki eyes as beautiful beings of light and completely whole, no matter what they look like, and recognizing, just the divinity in them, and not, bringing all the sadness that we might feel or the pity that may come up, not showering that on them. So
I think that is also very important. And don't be like me. I fostered 2 kittens, kept one. So you go
The
to
kids, I'm done with kittens. I love them, but I'm done taking them in.
don't go to the shelter and end up with 5 pets. It's
Exactly.
but
It's hard. That's hard. That's the hard part.
is there a tip for that? Not to adopt the whole shelter? How do you stop from taking every animal home?
Well, I just read something the other day. This guy was, and he's so right. He works with dogs, and he went in. There was a dog that had been at the shelter for 400 days, and he went into the shelter and spent 7 nights sleeping with this dog in a kennel, and just keeping the dog company, and trying to get him adopted. Bringing awareness to the dog's situation, and the dog did get adopted. And people were asking him why he didn't just take the dog. And he said, well, if I took every dog that I wanted to help, then I'd have 1,000 animals in my house. And I think, so I have, when I would go in, the last cat I got was Bo, who's the orange boy. And I would go in and I'd see orange cats, and I'd just be like, I really want an orange cat. And then I'd leave, and I'd be like, okay, if he's not here next week, then I'm not going to even talk about it with my husband. I'm just gonna leave it. And somehow, Bo is just the one. We were waiting for him, I guess. But yeah, there are so many that I would want to take home. It's just really impossible to, that's what stops me. It's knowing that I can't save everyone.
No, and also I imagine also trusting the process, that the right person who actually are their human mate, soul mate, pet mate, or whatever you want to call it, will show up, right? Like, yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's why, like, again, I foster kittens only once, and here I am. We have a feral, crazy little thing that I love to death, and who hates my dog. So it's
Oh no.
well,
more Reiki. Just
exactly. But they haven't been together that much yet. So I also wanted a little bit to talk about you as a person. So Kelly 2006 and Kelly 2023, when we're doing this interview, if you could see what is the main difference on how you live life a little bit beyond the Reiki, like how has that changed your life and the way you approach life in general?
That's a really good question.
I know it's a tough one, but it came.
Does everybody go, when they hear that?
It's the first time I ask it this way. Sorry.
Okay. So it's kind of funny because Reiki had such a subtle way of changing me that I didn't notice it so much, but I knew from other people that I was changing. And so one thing that was really surprising to me and was like a real hit over the head that I was changing was my husband and I had, we were doing some rearranging. My husband wanted to change some things down in this room where I spend a lot of time. And I immediately was like, no, no, I don't want to. And then I just thought, why did I do that? And I thought, well, I'm just going to say yes today. We'll see what happens. We can always change it back, which was just totally out of my, regular way of behaving. And so we changed everything around, and I wound up being so thrilled, right? I just love the way the room came out and just opened up space for me. And now this is the room I practice in all the time. And this was probably, I don't know, maybe like 2009 or so. And so I had to look at that, like, why do I always say no? What is that about? And I discovered too, when I spent a lot of time in the beginning with the second symbol, it was really hard for me to hang out in that energy. And so kind of later on, after I spent more time with Reiki, it occurred to me that, it's great to be grounded, but you can be too grounded. And you can get to the place where you're stuck, which is where I was, naturally, I'm a Capricorn, winter's my time. I'm more of a grounded person anyway, but I love, chanting the first symbol and practicing with the first symbol. But then I was like, no, maybe I better start bringing that energy up a little bit. So that experience was really, it really was life changing, because I started to look at, some of the things that just are automatic, reflexes that don't have any basis in anything, just that's, how I was kind of grounded and stuck. And so I'd just say no to everything and then look, close off all these opportunities. So that was such a big change in, saying no and then changing my mind, saying yes, and seeing how perfect that turned out when I did say yes, that it gave me the opportunity to pay more attention to how balanced I am in my energy, and how much I'm, it's really great to work with the practices that you love and to be really comfortable with. But often for me, it's like, well, I really need to work with the stuff that is as a struggle. And so even when we did the back in the day when we were on the phone doing teleconferences for workshops with Frans, we did one on the Reiki precepts. And I don't know about you, but my initial training with the Reiki precepts was like, put it on your mirror and recite it like 3 times in the morning and 3 times at night. And so we did this whole workshop on it. And so we recited them and then we were going to meditate on them. So we did that. And I was like, okay, do not anger. Nah, I'm not angry. Check. I'm good with that. Worry. Yeah, worry. My dad was a worrier. I'm a worrier. And so I just kind of, it was like things I had to check off a list. It was really funny. But then I was like, I should probably look at that. Why did I go over that first one so quickly? And when I did, like, I got out my dictionary and I'm like, okay, so anger isn't just smoke coming out of the ears and the red face and yelling. It's, some resentment. It's silent scorn. I always laugh at my students. They're like, yeah, I know that one. And just subtle layers or subtle levels of anger that I wasn't taking into account when I was thinking about do not anger. So that really helped me to, to recognize the depth of the precepts and the importance of the precepts on how we do our own work. And I didn't get that in my early training. That was, they were just out there. We read them and it was tradition, but it wasn't like take those things and work with them, which to me is really life-changing too. I mean, that's how we become brighter. That's how we, let go of everything that we don't need and just, be in our true nature.
It's also such a description of the goal of Reiki, right? Like you have this practice so you can let go of anger, worry, be grateful, and be more compassionate and your true essence. So it's the same training you had. And literally, I feel it a lot because I see it on Instagram. It's almost like they've become like an Instagram post instead of a meditation tool, right? We're like, yeah. And that's, especially when we're like, we identify as female, anger is not something we express so obviously.
Right.
And I love that you brought to the table that it's not, it can be resentment, it can be being sarcastic, frustration a lot, right? We're frustrated, all of those. So when we say I don't feel angry, actually we have to check because there is no human being. I know they may not get stuck into anger because they're evolved, but like everybody has those emotions at one point. So I appreciate you bringing that subtlety because sometimes we're also very literal, do not anger.
Right.
As you say, like, I'm not red, I'm not hitting, I'm not like throwing punches, I'm fine. Like, no. There is a lot, especially I think females were like, when we identify as female, we are not allowed in society because then we're aggressive, we're non-feminine. So I think that one, we tend to go more to the worry one. Mm-hmm. But usually they're pretty linked,
yes.
They're so separate.
Yeah, as a kid, I remember my mom saying, don't be angry. You shouldn't be angry. And I internalized that, obviously. So
well, I didn't because I grew up with a Spanish mother and drama and anger and like intensity is a thing. So my family is the opposite. I'm like, can we please stop with the snapping? Can we please just breathe? But that's not me. That's me the last 10 years, not before. Every culture also is very different. Like a Latin culture will be a lot like effusive and a little bit like temperamental. But we all have to do that and work a lot. And another thing that I love about what you said, when you said I used to say no, and then I said yes, is an opening, right? Opportunities. Sometimes to keep ourselves safe and centered, we close things, which is not, but we close it so much that we don't let life in. and the good things in. So I found it a beautiful story also, firm and flexible, but also closed and open, right? Open-hearted.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really profound moment for me to realize that I spent a lot of time saying no for no reason. Just like that was my go-to. Yeah, nope.
You're a Capricorn, you're meant to do that.
I was like, I have to process this first, but still, there just wasn't any, there wasn't any wiggle room at all. It was just like, no, I don't think so.
I think Scorpios say no half the time, but we go crazy. We don't think too much without like with the no and the yes. We go a little bit crazy as well. But beautiful work, and thank you for sharing that. I also wanted a little bit to talk about, the way you see the Reiki community now, a little bit in Vermont, because every state is different. I know there were like also a lot of pressure with legalities and things in Vermont. So a little bit, how do you see it and your personal take on it? It doesn't have to be like perfect.
Oh, well, I did spend some time going up to the State House to sit in on the meetings that they were having, the committee meetings about registering Reiki, or, legislation about Reiki. There was an incident here where actually it had to involve a massage therapist, which there is no licensing for massage here in Vermont. And so when that happened, it kind of put a light on, we don't have any kind of regulation here. So, so in the end, what happened was they decided to just have us register, which for a Reiki practitioner makes a lot of sense, because they were, just like they were doing in Massachusetts and other places, lumping Reiki in with modalities where people are getting undressed or where there's manipulation of tissue and all of that. And so we had at the time, the Vermont Reiki Association also wrote a letter. So we had a good representation. A couple of us went up. And so I just spoke with my senator recently, and she said that she didn't see it coming in again. Although I saw that there was, we were still listed as a potential state on Reiki Unified, but that's not the case, at least not for the next couple of years. So Reiki is safe here for now. And but I am registered with the state, and I have to give out a disclosure form so people know where to contact if there's a problem, have insurance and all that. So
that is actually pretty reasonable, to be honest. Like, I advise all of my students who do Reiki 2 who want to go professional to get a liability insurance. And yes, also like, do not undress people, and check if you can also touch, and because some states you cannot even touch or move, so to check the
right
as well. And I love the fact that I talked to my senator, so thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you. Yeah,
again
that's a benefit of a small state, right? I bumped into her at the town common one day. This is like, hey. And then when I reached out, I mean, they're great. When I reached out to her by email, she said, yeah, I know what you're talking about, but we're good and we're not going to have to worry about it.
Oh my God, I'm impressed now of talking to you. I'm like, wow, I don't think I can ever talk to a senator in New York, but like, that's a good thing, as you say, a small state. And Vermont is pretty relaxed as a state. It's pretty like an equal, everybody has kind of a right kind of state,
Yeah, we're very, I love living here. I just feel the sense of community here is really beautiful. And actually Vermont is the only state, I think, in the country still that has a Reiki association. So we were like the first state to have one. I don't know if we're still the only state to have one.
And what would the benefits of a Reiki association be for, like, to be part of it or to create one, if another state or someone else is thinking of creating an association in their state?
I think, well, it was, there's a sense of community around it. And then back before COVID, we did a lot of events like cancer. There's a cancer event up in Stowe every year that's like 3 days. And so we go up, practitioners would go up with their tables, and we had a code of ethics. And so we would sign on that, you'd sign off on that so that they felt like they had good, reliable people who were doing the practice with the attendees. So there were different events around the state, and there are different, people around the state that are members.
That sounds delightful. Yeah, after COVID, for example, in New York, like the Reiki scene has changed so much. It's almost non-existent. Hopefully we'll come back. Yoga studios are slowly coming back, but hopefully states where there are cars and people can drive around, they will be able to get together a little bit more.
Yeah, I just actually started teaching human Reiki again.
Yeah.
In person. I've been teaching over animal Reiki in person at the Little Red Barn Farm, where I met my friend that and so because that was all outside. So in the summer I was teaching there, but I just started teaching again, and it's so nice to teach level 1, and now I'm teaching both ends, level 1 and Shimpoden. So
Oh, wow. That's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's really fun to be doing it again. And it's just so different. I teach it differently now, or not differently, but I do have the additional knowledge of working with animals that to me, really, I bring that into my people work. And I started to see that a lot, like giving good examples of how to be with a person in the space, just like would be with an animal, without touching, because traditional Reiki is a lot about hand positions and everything. People expect that. But over the years, working in the hospital and working with somebody who maybe had C. diff, and I'm in PPE and I can't touch them, but I can still do Reiki, or a hospice person who I can't, I have to stand at the bottom of the bed, or, so having that additional practice of always thinking about being in that energy, expanding that energy, not needing my hands, it comes from the animal Reiki too. I get that affirmation from that, I guess.
No, it's beautiful. And I think that is probably one of the best tips that we can take from animal Reiki to human Reiki, right? And I'm going to ask you a question I've never asked before to anyone. Don't hate me. It's a very simple question.
Mm-hmm.
I use, like you do, holding the space, the expression a lot. And then the last week, someone said, well, what do you mean by holding the space? Right. And I think because when we've been holding the space, we're so used because we can feel it. If you have to put, because again, animal Reiki is really about holding the space like 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. How will you define that for someone who is still very much into hands-on? And when we're talking, you and I, like, yeah, holding the space. They're like, yeah, WTF, what are they saying?
Yeah, I'll tell you that lately I've been having a lot of these sort of semantic talks about Reiki, because it is really hard to describe, and it's also hard to put into words what we're doing and how we're doing it. Is it an offering? Is it a gift? What are we doing? Are we doing? But when I think of holding space, to me, it means calming myself, focusing on the light that's within me and expanding that light without any judgment, without any expectation, unconditionally. And just sort of like I was saying with listening, with listening to somebody who's in grief, of just sitting there, allowing everything to happen. So I kind of see it as allowing, maybe would be the word.
I think I will never have put it into those perfect words, but I love what you said, like feeling that inner light, extending it and allowing it to reach where it has to reach. I think it's beautiful. Thank you so much. And again, every interview I do, I steal from people. So now I'm like, I'm going to have the right words.
Well, I have to say that I loved your, when we practiced over COVID on Sundays, that was where I first met you or knew about you. And you did the very best shine or the 3 diamond meditation. I love how you do that.
Oh, thank you. I do love that meditation a lot, because for me, it's a little bit what you say. I was the opposite of you. I was too much into the air. So really understanding, if you have the roots, and you feel safe, that heart can open, you have an anchoring to open. So just understanding the relationship and how those 3 energetic centers are so important. And they are all unique, but they're also together, and they're also not important, the limitation, it's just beautiful, the qualities they have. So I really appreciate that.
with our practice, let animals lead method of animal Reiki, when we talk about animal Reiki, the Reiki part is for us, right? So all those practices that we do, the Joshin Kokyoho and Seishin Tuitsu and everything, it's for us to be able to sit with an animal. I mean, a lot comes up when we're doing that. It's an honor, first of all, just like it is to work with a person. But we need to be grounded. We need to be centered. We need to be letting go of anger and worry, and then also not getting in our head about how we want things to go. Because the minute we do that, the animal's just like, no, never mind. I'll come back later.
I love it because they are so honest, right? You're gonna have a human on the table, and you can kind of feel it. They go like, and you can see they're dying to move, but they're not moving because they're trying to be respectful and doing what is expected of them in a Reiki session. Animals have no qualms. They'll just be like, lady, you're unfocused. Like, you have a weird brain today. Ciao, I'm going.
Yeah, I'm out of here. Come back another day. And also, well, I had a funny experience when I was at the Care Foundation this past week in Florida, and exotic animals. And I worked with 2 animals who were ill, and there was a lot of commotion around me and everything. So I didn't feel like I was entirely in the space as much as I wanted to be. And then when I was done working with them, I went and sat with Lola, the bear. She's a big northern black bear, but I went and sat with her, and boy, was I grounded. I mean, just all of a sudden, everything in my head right down. And it was just amazing. Such a difference, right? Being around her energy, which is just heavy and grounded, and then being around the energy of these other animals and everybody going around, and a lot of commotion happening. It was a noticeable difference.
And you just said something beautiful, right? Like Lola grounding you and sharing her space with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of time, and this is my perception, I'm gonna go and share Reiki with the animals, and it's a two-way street, right? Like,
absolutely.
I
mean, the other guy I worked with when I was down there in Boise, big man-eating crocodile. And I was actually, it was a teacher training a few years back, and I was with my friend Jean, and we were practicing Reiju, and we were sitting near his enclosure. And when I was doing Reiju with Jean, I can never explain the stillness that I felt. And it wasn't me. I knew it was coming from Ngozi. It wasn't me, because he was there and he was clearly aware of everything. I could just tell his awareness of everything going on was happening, but he wasn't moving, and he was completely still. And I could feel that. And so when I did that Reiju, I think that's the only time I've ever come from that place of stillness. It was really something.
It's beautiful. I also like, especially for Reiju and for people who are not into our lineage attunement or initiation, right? Letting go and just be in the space and opening your heart beyond, you have to be in your heart, but also opening your heart, because if it's a unification ritual, right? So it means we're also going to get some beautiful things out of the person or the animal as well. So I love that description, because I think in my head, I still like, I'm sharing Reiki to my dog or to the cat. Like, I still, with humans, I'm a lot better. Ironically, I'm the opposite. With animals, sometimes I still like, okay, Gabby, little feral, crazy cat, come and give me stuff, right?
Maybe she's teaching you how to be crazier.
Oh my God, I adore her. Like, she makes me laugh a lot, which lately haven't so much. So like, yeah. She brings that playfulness because she's like a younger me in a cat version. She's like, oh, we have to be like you.
So well, we definitely see animals as teachers and healers. So that's, one of our 6 pillars of let animals lead method, seeing animals as teachers and healers. And I've seen it over and over again. And Bo, he gets on the table with my people who come. I have to make sure they're okay with a cat, and they're like, yeah, bring it. So he'll come in and he gets right on his own, on their legs or on their belly or whatever, and he just hangs out.
They have a deeper understanding than we will ever have. They're beautiful things.
Yeah, they are.
So we're approaching the closing, and I have to ask you one question I also ask everyone, and is the end one. Because when I see you, you're so grounded, so smart, practicing for many years. if I'm a beginner practitioner, I'm like, oh my God, like you're so far away from me. But we all started at the same place. So do you have like an oops or a teachable lesson that you would like to share with people? Something that perhaps seemed like a mistake or a misperception, but actually was a big lesson beyond the big room one and the no, but more about the practice per se.
I had I tell this all the time with the do not worry precept when we're going over that I have a friend who was really wanted to try Reiki, and I was kind of surprised. I was doing like a little opening for a business, and so I was just doing little sessions, and I was fairly new. And so my friend was going to come and try Reiki, and she's like super practical, law student, the whole thing. And I was really surprised she wanted to do it. So anyway, she comes and she gets on the table, and I'm doing the session. And in the beginning, especially, I felt so much heat when I did Reiki. Somehow that doesn't happen as much anymore, but now I have the confidence to know it's working, right? So
I'm there too. Yeah.
That's a nice part about it. So I'm doing the session, and I'm thinking the whole time, just like, what is going on here? I'm not feeling anything. She's going to think I'm crazy, blah, blah, blah. So at the end, she gets up and she's like, wow, that was really cool. I've never felt anything like that before. Like, that's like my lesson is, if I had been present and not been in my head about the worry and what was happening and not happening, it would have been an amazing session for her. But I got in my own way. And so that was a really good lesson for me on letting Reiki do its thing, trusting Reiki, and knowing that just because I'm not feeling something doesn't mean the other person isn't feeling something.
I appreciate you very much for sharing that, because I found that our doubt about the efficacy, and I put that into quote marks, of the session, if it's working or not, I think that is the hardest part about working, especially when we go professional. Mm-hmm. I think that is probably one of the biggest obstacles. We always have the doubt. And as you advance, ironically, as you say, we feel less and less. And if you don't trust, because part of the practice is you get so used to the energy, perhaps, I don't know what's the theory, but I feel a lot less. At the beginning, I used to feel like so much, and now I don't feel anything except love, compassion, emotions, beautiful emotions. And I have to trust that it's working, because, it's part of the process. But at the beginning, it's pretty hard. So I really appreciate you saying, and I think you frame it beautifully. The fact that you don't feel doesn't mean the other person doesn't. I see. Right. For animal, as we're talking today, very dual.
Yeah, and that's really useful information if you're working with the animals, because again, you don't, they're kind of moving around and you're not doing your hands-on, so your hands aren't feeling anything directly, right? You might not, but yeah, you never know. You just never know with the energy.
All about trust. So I do have the drawing I did for you, and it's a little bit different. I was surprised because it's a little bit different. Still the same palette I always use, but it was a little bit busier than what I usually do, and bigger. So your words, if I'm not wrong, were like obviously animals, nature, and gratitude. Hopefully I'm not messing the words up.
No, that was it.
So this is the drawing. Let me not destroy the computer.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. So it's not completely nature, but there was this idea of looking at yourself with love in the mirror. And this idea in Buddhism about mirrors, and, a little bit about the practice being the mirror of that perfect self. Sorry, today I'm like a little stammery. Connected to nature, through obviously nature, like vegetable nature, but also like, this is probably the cat inspiration from Gabby.
And I see the goddess symbol. Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Yes. So,
and the cat.
So I'll be sending that to you.
Oh, thank you, Natalie. That's beautiful. I love it. And we were just talking about mirroring, with the animals, and that's a major part of our practice. So.
Yeah, I don't know why the mirror came into my head from the beginning. Like, I'm never gonna be able to draw someone looking at herself in the mirror. So,
a beautiful job. I was so excited. I was like, I can't wait to see, because I've seen all the ones you've done, for Helene and other people, and I'm just like, I can't wait to see what it's gonna be.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like it. I enjoy that part a lot, and I never know what feels right for the person until it pops up in my head, and then the drawing comes to life. And this time I was trying to escape the mirror because I'm not gonna be. It's too hard. after a
not
week.
do it. It
Like,
looks beautiful. I just love it. I can't wait to put it up in here.
thank you so much.
Thank you,
I'm
Natalie.
really grateful for you sharing your wisdom. I think what I love about these interviews, we really were able to get almost like the lessons from human to animals and animals to humans. Also sharing again the process of being a doula for animals and their human companions, like some of the stuff I didn't even know we could do as practitioners, with the right training. So I really appreciate everything you do, and also all the wonderful work of talking to your senator and all of that, which now I'm completely impressed. Sometimes there is this expression unsung hero, so it feels like it fits here. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really kind. I appreciate that, Natalie. Thank you so much.